Okay, hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to this section of the course. In this section of the course, we're going to start getting our hands dirty with the AWS console. So this lecture is called Identity Access Management 101. Now by 101, there has been some confusion in the past with students. Basically 101 is an introductory level course. So when you go to university in Australia or in the UK or in the US and you're studying accounting, for example, they always have a 101 course. And then as you deep dive further and further, you'll have 201s, 301s, 401s. But the number 101 just simply means that this is an introduction to identity access management. So what is identity access management? Well, basically, it's where you're going to configure who uses AWS. Essentially, identity access management, or as we'll refer to it from now on, IAM, it allows you to manage users and their level of access to the AWS console. It's important to understand IAM and how it works, both for the exam and for administrating a company's AWS accounts in real life. And IAM will come up mostly in the security sections of your exam, and it is covered in great detail in the security speciality course, and it also comes up fairly regularly in the Solutions Architect Associate as well as the Developer Associate courses. So what does IAM give you? Well, basically it gives you centralized control of your Amazon Web Services account. It allows you to have shared access to your AWS account, so you can invite different users. You can even basically peer AWS accounts to other AWS accounts, and we'll look at that in the account section of the course. And it gives you granular permissions, so you can go in and say, okay, I only want user John Smith to be able to access DynamoDB using read-only access. So you can drill down to specific users, specific services, and then specific levels of access. It also allows you to do identity federation. This includes federating with Active Directory, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So what do we mean by that? Well, for example, it allows you to sign into the AWS console using your single sign-on, which is your SSO, and that's what you would use to sign into your corporate environment. So when you lock your computer or when you start it up for the first time, you enter in your corporate username and your corporate password. You can actually use the same username and passwords for the AWS console. You can use AWS resources using things like Facebook or LinkedIn. You can create apps that actually basically authenticate against Facebook and LinkedIn, and then based on that authentication, it will allow you to use the resources within AWS. And we actually show you how to do exactly that in our iOS with AWS course. In that course, you'll actually build out your own Instagram style clone using Swift, and then essentially what you do is, in order to start storing photos that you take on your Instagram clone in the AWS cloud, you need to log in using your Gmail credentials. So we show you how to set all that up in the iOS with AWS course. If you're a budding developer, I recommend you check that out once you've passed your exams. IAM also gives you multi-factor authentication, and in the very next lab, we're going to show you how to set that up. And that is commonly a very important thing that you have to do in order to secure your AWS account. AWS recommend that every single person sets up multi-factor authentication, certainly for the root account. And we'll come back to what I mean by root account later on in the next lecture. And then it also allows you to provide temporary access for users or devices and services where necessary. So again, most common cause of that is when you build out a mobile app and it needs to store something. Maybe it's just storing data in DynamoDB. You can give your users temporary access to write to your DynamoDB tables. It also allows you to set up a password rotation policy. So how often do users have to rotate their password? Every month, every 3 months, and then you can also have password policies, so that has to have like uppercase letters, lowercase letters, etc. And then it integrates with many different AWS services. So when we build out different Lambda functions, we have to give Lambda the ability to talk to DynamoDB, for example. We have to give Lambda the ability to talk to S3. We won't cover that too much in the course in terms of Lambda, but where we do use this a lot is with EC2. So when we provision a virtual machine, and that's basically what EC2 is, we have to give that virtual machine a role in order for it to talk to other AWS services. And don't worry, we'll cover that off in a couple of more sections in the course. IAM also supports PCI DSS compliance. PCI DSS, for those that don't know, is basically an audit process that you have to go to if you are taking online payments and you're handling those payments or storing the credit card details yourself. If you're using a third-party provider like Stripe or PayPal, for example, they would then handle the PCI DSS component. And PCI DSS, again, comes up mostly in the Security Specialty Certificate course. So we'll just explore some critical terms for IAM just before we go into our lab. So what's a user? Well, user's pretty easy. Think of end users and think of people. We then have groups. So a group is a collection of users under one set of permissions. So you might have a group for your developers, you might have a group for your finance department, or a group for your human resources department. And inside that group, we have a whole bunch of different users. And then we have roles, and roles are basically something that you create and then assign them to other AWS resources. And I sort of mentioned it a little bit earlier, but we'll be using roles a lot in the EC2 section of the course. We'll be creating roles so that our EC2 instances or our virtual machines can talk to S3, they can talk to RDS, they can talk to DynamoDB, etc. And then finally, we have policies. We're going to explore that in the next couple of labs, but policies is basically just permissions. So you create a policy document, and then you assign that policy document either to a user or to a group or even to a role. And we'll have a look at how we do that in the next couple of labs. So what's the easiest way to learn all this? Well, let's start our first lab and go and get our hands dirty. So if you've got the time, please join me in the next lecture. Thank you.